And I am the happiest I have ever been because I am happy inside. It's not about what I have. It's not about who's in my life. It's none of that. It's the complete joy that I feel inside because I feel completely grounded. I feel completely at peace with who I am and the purpose and mission that I have in this world.
Welcome to the Midlife Reinvention podcast. I'm your host, Kavita, and the founder of Power Purpose Play, a global community of women in midlife. I'm here to tell you that it's your time now to rediscover what has always been inside of you and bring that out into the world. If you're wondering what's next, but don't know quite what that is, or if you feel a twinge in your heart telling you that you have so much more to do and so much more to offer, you're in the right place. Ask yourself, if not now, when? Do you want to leave your job, start your own business, take control of your health, reignite the passion in your marriage, write that book, or at least that first chapter? Transitions like this can be daunting, but through listening to my story and interviews with incredible women every week, I hope to inspire you to take action. I rediscovered myself after the age of 50, and I know you can too. It's my time now to help you do just that. I'm so excited you're here. Let's dive in. I'm so thrilled that you're all here today and, taking the time out for your own personal growth, which is so important. This community and this podcast is really dedicated to inspiring women like you who are looking to rediscover what has really always been inside of you and bring that out into the world, regardless of your age or your circumstances. So I'm really honored to have met amazing women and people along the journey of starting Power Purpose Play. And, with each discussion, I learn a little bit more about how to figure out how to make this next chapter in our lives the best chapter, possibly the best chapter in our lives. So to that end, I'm so pleased to have on the show today the brilliant and beautiful Vicki Bradley. I wanted to give you a little background on Vicki. Vicki is a seasoned executive. She has over 25 years of experience leading high-performing teams in the retail industry across North America. She's held amazing roles with retailers, including the president of the Bombay Furniture Company in Canada. She was a senior vice president of sales and operations with Marks and Spencer's, VP of sales and operations with Holt Renfrew, and progressive roles within the Woolworth Organization across North America. So today, Vicki is a founder and executive coach at Vicki Bradley and Company, and she works with businesses to attract and retain and advance women into senior leadership roles. And being a leader herself, I'm sure she has so much to offer. And she's also the founder and CEO of Women in Leadership Empowered, Will Empowered. And in this role, she is a mentor and a top coach for executives to help them with tools and training to become effective leaders and to accelerate their careers. So, wow, what a great resume. And I don't even know where to start, Vicki. So pleased to have you here and learn from your own reinvention as well as your amazing experience coaching women. So how are you doing today?
Awesome. And thank you for such a beautiful introduction. It's always a pleasure, Kavita, to chat with you and to talk with your community. So thank you for having me.
Oh, just a pleasure. Just a pleasure. We were just talking about all the great things that are going on in the new year. And one of the reasons that I started this business and this podcast is really to help women recognize that it's really their time now, to look after themselves, because perhaps after a lifetime of looking after everybody else, it's really their time now to focus in on what they can provide. And maybe if we could get a little bit into your story, moving from executive to what you're doing now in terms of helping women in their careers. Can you tell us a bit about your story and, what kind of triggered the transition from going from where you were to where you are? Yeah, everybody has a story we can learn from, right? So
yes, actually. And you know what? It's a story that I'm incredibly grateful for because it really was the catalyst for the change that I've gone through. So Kavita, first of all, thank you for having me, as I said, and thank you for sharing, a little bit about my bio, because I think it's important for people to understand where I came from, because I was one of those, on that hamster wheel, autopilot, aggressive executive, spent, the last few years before I left that world, I was on a flight almost every other day, and the stress levels were just off the charts. Mm-hmm. And at that time, I also had 2 small children, 1 4 and 1 a year old, not even a year old. So 2 children under the age of 5. Mm-hmm. And I got really sick. My body physically shut down and said, no more, can't do that anymore. And, at first, of course, I was terrified and had all this fear, because it was like, oh my God, I can't do what I've always done. And how do I raise my kids, and all those things that go through us. And I say that it was a gift because it was, mm-hmm. because I spent 8 years rehabilitating and really trying to figure out, now what do I do? And that has led me on the path that I'm on now. And so I went back to school and I got my certification in coaching. And how I went about this, Kavita, was I took a step back and I said, what do I love? Like, what do I love about the roles that I have had? Because trust me, I loved the roles that I had. I loved being the president at Bombay, and not about being the president. It was about the teams that I led, the work that we were doing. Like, we completely turned that company around. But everything always came back to the people. Mm-hmm. And so I knew inside that whatever I did, I had to do something that impacted people. And so I really went on this whole self-discovery of what I loved, what I didn't like, what was important to me. I really took a look at my values and how I could align that and be very purposefully precise with the work that I was going to do. And I've had lots of help. I've had my own coaches who have helped me really get clear on what my mission is. And being in alignment is available to all of us once we become conscious of that. Mm-hmm. And believing the possibilities and not getting caught up in, well, I can only do this, or this is all I know, because that's not true. You've just forgotten. So going through an experience of remembering, what is your gifts? What are your strengths? What are the things that, when you get up every day, you get excited about sharing that with the world. And so for me, that was that pivotal point of how I transitioned from being this executive to now it's my time to help others and to help women in particular. Not that I don't work with men, because I do, but really helping women get in touch with what is their passion, what is their purpose, and how to, because you're doing a disservice when you don't share that with the world. And it took me a long time to recognize that. But once you do recognize it, you can't see anything else, right? So it is that consciousness, right? When you become conscious of it, you can't see any other way. Right. So that's kind of what led me to where I am. And Women in Leadership Empowered came to be because, I worked for this technology company who asked me to come in and work with their high potential females. Mm-hmm. In that experience, what we learned was the importance of having that community, which is what you're creating, right? Mm-hmm. Our Purpose Play is all about community. And that's what Will Empowered is about. It's like learning that other people, doesn't matter what type of work or industry they come from, they share similar challenges. And those gremlins are the same, right? Mm-hmm. It's that self-doubt. It's the lack of belief in yourself, or the messages that are ingrained in us. So then when you're in that community, you learn, oh gosh, it's not just me. Everybody feels this way, or lots of people feel that way. And so that came to be so that we could impact more women, across the world. Mm-hmm. And I was a little before COVID. So I set it up virtually before everybody was used to that. And it's so funny now because people gave me such pushback. They're like, well, why can't you do it in person? And I was like, because people can't come from all over the world.
Yeah.
I want to be able to impact them in their homes every day.
So you're ahead of your time.
I was ahead of the time. Yes, exactly. And so that's where we are today.
Yeah. You said so many important things, Vicki, and so resonates with me because we were on a similar, I think, journey. But when you said that really, if a change comes, you're faced with a change or you want to make a change, it's so important to look at what do I love, what do I value, and that alignment piece is so important. And I think before we do anything else, and that's from my experience as well, you really have to look within to understand what it is that you want to do moving forward and bring that out into the world. And, like you said, looking at what your gifts are, what do you want to share? What are your passions? And so important. I think the first step, like you mentioned, is really looking within. And, great tips there. I wanted to ask you that for many of our listeners who are contemplating change, like you and I have done in our life, they are afraid or they're hesitant, because, it puts them out of their comfort zone maybe, or they're just, they don't know, they know what they know. Right. Mm-hmm. And so what would you say to these women to help them get out of that, to make the leap? Like I know that you did, and it took you said 8 years, and it took me a long time too, but what would you say, like, to help them take the next steps?
Well, there's a couple of things. So one that's critical that you just brought up, it's that internal, right? Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm. If you're looking for external things for gratification or external things to tell you what to do, those are not sustainable.
Right.
It has to come from within. And a quote that I love is, if staying the same is more painful than the change. So it's thinking about, if you make that change, it's a 50-50, right?
Mm-hmm. Yeah. Yep.
You're not happy in the way it is today.
Yeah.
And so you got a 50-50 chance if you're going to be happier or you go back to being the same, right? Which is why I love that quote. Mm-hmm. And so it's not easy. And I'm not going to stand here and pretend like it is easy. But is it hugely gratifying once you really take that leap and you make those changes? Yeah, mm-hmm. It is. Because what you're solidifying is you're becoming more in alignment. If you do it the right way, you're coming more in alignment with who you are meant to be. Mm-hmm. You are taking that path of your full potentiality, which is so critical. And especially in our world today, when we look at everything that's going on around us. And, Kavita, you and I have had lots of conversations about staying steady and stable. Mm-hmm. And it's so important that we are recognizing what our purpose is, because we're doing a disservice, not only to ourselves, but to those that we love and care about when we're not reaching our full potential. Mm-hmm. And I mean, how amazing is it to, you have children, I have children, and whether it's children or other people in your life, nieces, nephews, whatever, when they see you taking that step to find your purpose, mm-hmm. you're giving permission for them to do the same. And, like I said earlier, like I've had lots of coaches along the way, and you'll have different coaches because different coaches bring different aspects of what you need to help you continue to move forward. Mm-hmm. But what I would encourage people to do is really do some inner look at, what do you see as your gifts? Ask your friends even, how do they see you, right? Because we don't ever see ourselves the way others see us. So starting to really uncover, what are some of those things? What makes you happiest? Like when you're doing things, what makes you happiest? Mm-hmm. How do you bring more of that joy into your life? Mm-hmm. And that's really a lot of what I did. I mean, I honestly, and I used to say this and I didn't even understand why I said it. But when I was at Bombay, I used to say to my team, the day you get up and you look in the mirror and you go, oh God, I don't want to go to work today. This is the day to come in my office and say, we need to talk. I'll help you find the right job. I'll help you. Because when you get to that place, you're not helping anyone, especially yourself.
Mm-hmm.
You're putting limitations on yourself. And when you recognize that, then you have that ability to start to be more expansive. And the energy even that you put out when you do that, Kavita, you're then start to attract things. Because it's about power, purpose, play, right? Like you put that energy out and you were like, okay, I'm going to do this because I want to help women who are ready to take that next step. It's their time, but it was your time, right?
Mm-hmm.
You put that energy out and then all of a sudden different people started coming into your life that helped you to solidify and to help you continue to evolve power, purpose, play.
Yes. You know, what you just said about being aware of what makes you happy and brings you joy. And I think that is, I've been doing that a lot more consciously aware of that. You know, what brings you joy? What are the things that move you forward? And why do you want to spend your time doing things that don't uplift you? Really? You know, on that, I read you wrote a recent article about steps to kind of being consciously aware of yourself. And I think it kind of leads, what we just discussed kind of leads well into that. Maybe you had 4 points in there that talked about how do you become more consciously aware of yourself and, you know, tap into your inner self.
Yeah. Well, and yes, first of all, it's recognizing what you already do, right?
Yeah. Mm-hmm.
And I know that can sound easy, but that's also why I say talk to your best friend. What do they see in you, right? Because you need to become very conscious of the things that are assets to you. Like, you know, what is important to you, whether that's connections, whether that's having alone time, you know, being very aware of what that looks like. And sometimes that is quietening that saboteur or that gremlin or that little voice, whatever you want to call it. I have one friend who calls it her lizard brain, who that voice starts going, right? And it's like, well, why are you taking time for you? Right? Like you shouldn't be taking time for you. It's important that we become very conscious of those pieces because so many of us get in that autopilot, that hamster wheel, where it's like, okay, I'll get up, brush my teeth, put my makeup on, and I go. And it's taking time to be very intentional. Let's just take a few minutes and think about, you know, even how you want to start your day, being conscious of that, right? What do you want to impact that day? And then it's also about how do you decrease those stress levels, right? As women in particular, we're so fast at saying, oh yeah, I'll do that. Yes, I'll take care of that.
Right.
Or internally we're going, why is it always me that has to cook? Why is it always me that has to do the cleanup? Recognizing those things and where they come from, and how do you start to eliminate some of those? Is it okay if the dishes don't get washed this morning and they get washed at lunch? Or all of those little pieces that we start to look at and be aware of what thoughts, feelings, and emotions are coming up. I think the other big one that is super important is not comparing yourself to others. Like, you know, we're very quick to look at social media and say, oh, you know, Susie over here has got this glamorous life and she's doing this. And why can't I do that? You know, I'm stuck doing this. You don't know what Susie's life is really like.
Right.
And so, you know, it's looking at how do you make the most of your life? You know, I go back to the comment I made about with my employees about looking in the mirror, right? You have a choice. When you become very conscious of how do I want to show up today? Do I want to be happy and impart that joy on somebody else? Or do I want to go into the world upset, miserable because the alarm didn't go off on time? Like you have a choice. And so making sure that we're very aware of how we utilize those choices.
Hi, my friend. Kavita here. Do you often feel blocked from moving forward? We all feel that way at times. These are referred to as energy blocks. I've created a short, actionable PDF guide to help you release your negative energy blocks. Click the link in the description to download it now for free. Now, let's get back to the episode.
Yeah. And I think, sorry, I just thought of the fact that the choices, they don't also have to be huge choices, right? They can be incremental, small, really every moment of the day, you have a choice to make in what you're doing. So it can be choosing the positive thing versus the thing that's not going to move you forward. So it doesn't have to be big, major things. All the little things add up to the bigger positivity in your life, right?
100%. And in that consciousness, so thank you for saying that, because that is really listening and paying attention to the subtleties, right?
Mm-hmm, mm-hmm.
And if we use social media or media as an example, it's constantly putting at you, fear right now, especially with where we are in the world, but it's also the comparison, like all of those things are coming at you constantly.
Mm-hmm.
So those are subtleties. And those little voices are going, well, Kavita, what are you doing? Right.
Yeah.
And so it takes a courageous person then to step back and make a choice to say, well, what I'm doing today is I'm going to have a podcast with Vicki, and we're going to send some inspiration out to the world. Right?
Yes.
You're being conscious how and what you're doing.
Yes.
And the more you practice those little things, the easier it becomes. We do this in Women in Leadership. We do a whole quarter on conscious leadership, and it's being aware of what are the different types of energy that you can tap into to make a difference. Because you can choose, right? You can choose to be positive, or what we call in our program anabolic, which is all about how do you fuel yourself with more of things that are uplifting, things that are serving you in a good way. Or you can choose to be catabolic, which is things that hurt you. They, take your energy, they make you lethargic, they create a lot of dis-ease in us. And eventually that can turn into disease, which is where I was. That's when I got sick. I was in that toxic state of catabolic energy, and had to make that switch to consciously choosing, I don't want to be that person. I don't want to spread more of the good than the bad.
I like that dis-ease and disease. Yeah. Yeah. It builds up, right?
It does. And you don't even realize it, right?
Yeah.
Get on a hamster wheel. And I'll share an example with you.
Sure.
This was a few weeks ago. A friend of mine called and it had snowed. And she was like, geez, have you looked outside? Like, I can't believe this. She was going on and on, like how horrible this was. And I said to her, I go, I know, isn't it fabulous? I said, everything's so clean and so fresh and crisp. And she goes, oh God, you kill me because you're so optimistic. And I went, I know, right? I said, it's a choice.
Yeah.
I said, it's a choice.
Exactly.
And she got the point, because I over exaggerated the optimism. But I said to her, it's a choice. You can look at it and go, be Debbie Downer about it, or you can look at it and go, what a gift. Like, this, when we have this blanket of warmth that envelops our world, our earth, like, what is that doing? Right? What does it do to our earth? Right?
Yes.
So anyway, I share that because
you just gave me the tingles. Oh, that's great. That's great. I wanted to kind of ask you something a little bit different, is that, when I wanted to make a change, or when I knew in my soul that I needed to make this change, and you probably had the same feeling, I not only faced some outer resistance from people who were like, what are you doing? Everything is perfect. You have a great life. You've got a great career. Look at you. I wish I was you. Why are you rocking the boat? And not only did I have those external people telling me these things, it was my internal. We talked about, you said earlier about your internal gremlins, which really, truthfully, it really delayed my move. Like, it was going on for a few years, right? So can you kind of share maybe some of those obstacles that you had gone through, some of the resistance that you faced internally and externally, and, tips for how you can, I know this is a big topic, but how can you find it to move past these resisting factors,
Great question. In my program, I use the 5 R's, right? Which is the resistance, reluctance, rejection. Like it goes through all the different aspects of different ways that we might approach something. And so it's a big question.
Yes.
It is a very big question. So that kind of goes back to the comparison, right? Because not just comparison, but it's that thinking others know more than what we know. And for myself, when you ask about the resistance, it took like a Mack truck to hit me over the head, not once, but multiple times, Kavita.
Yeah.
So if I relate it to when I got sick, my body physically, I was scheduled for a flight to Dallas for work. And it was my 3 a.m. wake up for a 6 a.m. flight. And I woke up and I could not move physically, could not move. And I was in excruciating pain. And of course, I'm like, what is wrong with me? Like, this is weird. And I tried to get out of bed. I couldn't get out of bed. Physically, I could not walk.
Wow.
So my body shut down, right? And it was, now I know what happened. And then after a little bit, the next day I took a week off work. I had to work from home in my bed, which I did. Crazy. Then I was okay for, I think, a month.
Yeah.
And then it was the same scenario, exactly the same scenario again. 3 a.m. get up, 6 a.m. flight, going to Dallas. And I woke up, could not walk, could not move.
Oh my goodness.
I was in excruciating pain. And so what was happening with me is internally, I knew that I had to make changes, but I was so reluctant because I loved this job that I was doing. I was so resistant to making change that my body did it for me. That's how powerful we are.
Yeah.
My body said, yeah, no, you're going to listen this time. And I won't lie. So I went through the 8 years of rehabilitating and working on myself and doing all these things. And it happened again because I tried to jump in and do something that was not in alignment. And my body said, nope, you're not doing that. So now after 3 times of getting bonked over the head, I realized that if we really listen, that deep, deep inner will guide us if we allow it to. And so I had to surrender, basically. I had to surrender and say, okay, I get it. Help guide me. What am I supposed to do now? And that's how all of this has come to be. But it's common for others to say things because they're not comfortable with you doing something for you, right? Because it's like, oh, you're being selfish. You shouldn't be doing that for you. And what's happening is that's their inner saboteur saying, well, Vicki, then if Kavita can do that, why aren't you doing that? So it becomes an internal conflict with themselves that outwardly projects onto you. So when they say things to you about, Kavita, what are you doing? You lost your mind. You're leaving this great job. Really, it has nothing to do with you. It has to do with their own internal battle. So when you can understand that and just say, thank you very much. Thank you for your words. I appreciate that. But I have to be true to myself. Then that you're giving yourself that permission to become fully what you are meant to become.
It can be disappointing, can't it? When people around you are where you expect the most support, sometimes it's not there. And it's like, you don't understand. But I think it goes back to perhaps you were talking about energy levels and how people are working at different energy levels. And it's about understanding, okay, maybe that person is not there yet. So, understanding how we all kind of function at different energy levels as well. So,
and getting curious with them, right? Asking the question instead of internalizing what they're saying, but getting curious and asking the question to them to say, hey, if you had the opportunity to do anything, magic wand, right? What would you be doing? Because it's fascinating because you'll get one of two answers. You'll get somebody who gets really excited and says, oh, I would do, and they go into and you're like, really? Well, then why aren't you doing that? Because that's what I'm doing. right? I'm taking that. I'm being courageous and I'm doing that.
Yeah.
Or you might have the person who looks at you and says, no one's ever asked me that. And to be honest, I've never even thought about it.
Yeah. That's so funny you say that, because we met a couple of friends and who were in our bubble, and I asked them that question, and it was like, whoa. And some of the things that came out that I don't even think they realized. And it's like, well, why don't you do that? You'd be great at it, right?
Exactly.
So, and I think that kind of leads into the question about the courage and how does one find the courage to rediscover themselves? Because if we're going into, in our case, midlife, or, we've always done what up to this point, we're used to doing what we're doing, whether it's in a career or looking after our kids or whatever. But now we're in the stage where it's like, I have the opportunity to do whatever I want. That's why I'm calling it, it's my time. It's my time now. It may sound selfish, but I don't think it is. It's about finding the courage to really rediscover yourself. So, and I think some of the points where you were saying, looking internally and figuring out what that is, asking people what they think are your strengths, that would help you as well move along that, developing the courage. Is there any other ways that you can actually develop that courage to really change or to rediscover yourself? Is there other?
Well, a big part of it again is to have that internal conversation where you ask yourself, am I willing to continue and be okay, or do I want to instead of survive, do I want to thrive? Right? Because when you're at your full potential and you're doing what you love, then you thrive. Mm-hmm. And you know what? This is not just about on the exterior, I seem happy. That's not what I'm talking about. Mm-hmm. I'm talking mind, body, spirit. You are fully connecting with what you are meant to be doing. You are allowing yourself to be who you are meant to be. Mm-hmm. These other things have been steps along the way that are important, right? Because that helps you to realize what you do want to do, what you don't want to do. And they've been moments in our lives that have helped us craft where we're going. Mm-hmm. It helps us to learn and to identify what we are meant to do, just like yourself, like recognizing, the importance of power, purpose, and play, and that it's our time now, right? Mm-hmm. Yeah. And so that's not a selfish thing. And I hear this from women all the time where they'll say, oh, I feel so guilty. And I'm like, why? Yeah. Right. And have been there. I get it. I have been. And you're not being selfish. You're actually being selfless. Mm-hmm. And so knowing that when you do that, you're telling others that, hey, you can give yourself that permission.
Right.
So important.
Yeah, absolutely. And the other thing that I think we've had this discussion before, Vicki, is how women sometimes just don't recognize the great things that they've done.
Oh,
right.
Constantly.
And it's like, well, no, I never did this, but yeah, look what you did. And being able to take what you've done, look at the great things you've done, and translate that into what you might want to do in the future, and actually celebrate and recognize the great things you've done, the awesome person that you are, the great many people that you've influenced. So, just celebrating yourself. I think we don't do that enough, right?
We don't. And I'm so glad you said that, because there's such misconception about what that means, right? Because people think celebrating yourself has to be like the big job promotion or the new job, or, I just bought the dream house, or that's not what we're talking about. Even the fact that you are listening to this podcast today means that you need to celebrate yourself, because you've taken time out to listen. You're taking time out to learn, like, how do I become more in alignment with myself? Those are the reasons to celebrate. And it's the little things, you said that earlier, Kavita, the little things that add. And when you start recognizing the small things, even the book that's been laying on your nightstand for, 6 months and you haven't picked it up yet. Well, you pick it up and you read a chapter. Yeah, that's a good
for you.
thing.
Yeah.
Right. Exactly. Because you took time and this is something for you. And so it doesn't have to be the big monumental things, which I think as a society, we have programmed ourselves. It's the bigger, the better, the faster, the more of everything, where it is the more simplistic things and feelings, being in touch with those feelings, those thoughts, those emotions that allows us to celebrate. And, when you can look in the mirror and say, hey, I'm not happy about that. That's reason to celebrate, because you just become conscious that I don't want to say yes anymore to those things, or I said no to something. Right.
Yeah. And I think ironically in this last year, because the situation that the world finds ourselves in is that I believe people, and I don't know if you agree, people are more looking inwards now and saying, okay, I've had this opportunity to be at home. I look at it as an opportunity. Some people don't, but to be and I think that this time hopefully has given us all a period to reflect and to say, do I really want to go back and do what I was always doing? Because it was just habit, or it was just something that I always did. So it may be an opportunity now, especially, to realign ourselves and to say, hey, what is it that I really want to bring out into the world now? I mean, if I'm not going to do it now, when am I going to do it? Right?
Exactly. And it's, it's that one day one.
Yeah, exactly.
You have that choice. And yes, you're so right. I mean, so many more people are waking up to there's more to life. And there is, like, we weren't created to be on that hamster wheel and be on autopilot, right? Like, you were talking about my newsletter, like the example I gave of being consciously aware is driving, right? You drive somewhere and then you get there and you go, oh my God, how did I get here? Yeah. Driving here.
Yeah.
Right. Like, first of all, that's very dangerous. And I've been guilty of it, right? Like, get somewhere and I go, I don't even remember taking that street. Like, how did I get here? And so when we become conscious, it makes us very aware of the choices and whether we are making choices that are serving us. If they're not, then you have to stop and ask yourself, why am I doing that? Because you have that power. You have that ability to say, stop, no more.
Yes.
I'm not doing that.
Right.
Knowing you have the ability to do that. So
absolutely. Yeah.
That's what I think, back to your earlier question about how do you get the courage? Part of that is how you get the courage. It's that one step at a time. It's those subtleties that you start to recognize and that you go, no, I'm not doing that. I'm not doing that. I don't need to do that.
Right,
and so you start to change it. You change the pattern.
So based on your own experience in your life and, where you've come so far, would you say what would you say is, maybe your high point, or when did you kind of know that, okay, I've turned the corner and this is it? And maybe it's the same question as, like, what are you most proud of, or what are you happiest about in your life?
Wow. You know what?
Yeah. Okay, go on.
It's a great question, because honestly, I would say when I got sick, it was the scariest time in my life. I honestly I went into this black hole where I was like, oh dear Lord, how am I going to raise my children? Because my husband walked out on me when I got sick. And I'm in a country where I have no family. And I was like, oh dear God, how am I going to do this? And it took tremendous courage. It took great friends that were there to help lift me up, but never did I give up. Never. Because I knew at that moment that the determination or determinism within me was so great that I knew that this all happened for a reason. I didn't know, but I knew, if that makes sense.
Yes.
And that has completely changed my life. And I am the happiest I have ever been, because I am happy inside. It's not about what I have. It's not about who's in my life. It's none of that. It's the complete joy that I feel inside, because I feel completely grounded. I feel completely at peace with who I am and the purpose and mission that I have in this world. And
Oh
so,
my God. Wow.
well, and it was a big moment, right? Because people will say to me, how did you ever, because I mean, I had to learn to walk. You wouldn't have even recognized me. I looked like I was 100 years old, and I went through hell. And honest to God, I look at that as the greatest gift of my life.
Wow.
I wouldn't be here today doing what I do, as happy as I am, and impacting people the way that I impact people, had I not gone through that.
Wow. And the world is a better place for you, really, honestly.
Even with COVID, people say to me, how do you stay so optimistic? And I'm like, because I choose to.
Well, that's exactly what I was just going to say, is that what you had gone through, many people would have just given up, because it sounds like it was just such a traumatic experience. But instead, you, again, made the choice to turn your life around. And this is the whole thing. It is our choice.
100%.
And even though people say, no, I don't, I can't do this or I can't do this, you do have a choice. And from your, Vicki, from your experience and from what you just described, it's definitely so uplifting to hear that you can do it. We can all do it if you just put your mind to it. Yeah. So,
well, yes. And it takes people like you, it takes people like me, it takes the people in our connections, our network, that it's all of us helping each other.
Yes, 100%.
Yeah, to take those steps, because I certainly didn't do it by myself. Like, I had a lot of people in my life that was like, come on.
Well, it's the community you talked about before, right? Absolutely. It's so important to surround yourself with the right people, the positive vibes, and the community of people who are going to help you. And if you don't have that, then search for it. Look for it.
Yes, find them. And if you've got the Debbie Downers in your life, seriously think about minimize. You don't have to get them out of your life, but minimize the amount of time you spend with that person.
Yes.
And surround yourself with people who are uplifting, people who can see possibility, can see the good, can see, the opportunity in things. We have a choice. We can become victimized to it, or we can become the victor of it.
Yes, absolutely. Wow. That was so great. I mean, I've got tons of notes here as you're talking, but so helpful. I wanted to make sure that you let us know how, what you're doing right now. What are some of the initiatives you have going on, where people can find you? And because I'd love our listeners to search out Vicki, and she has so much knowledge and experience, and please let us know where we can find you and what you're doing right now.
Thank you, Kavita. Thank you.
Yeah.
Well, so I'm just getting ready to start Conscious Leadership, which is it's a quarter long, but it's an 8-week intensive program where I actually take women through the energy leadership assessment, so that you get to learn about the different types of energy and how you show up when all things are good, and when things are when you're under stress, like how you show up in the world. And so that is one of the programs I have going on right now. I also do the Will Forums, which, are very small group discussions. Kavita, you're part of that community where we come together and we talk about different topics, so that, again, it's the support with each other and talking through challenges that are happening. But you can find me at Will Empowered, Women in Leadership Empowered, or you can also find me at Vicki Bradley and Company. And the best email is vicki@willempowered.com.
Awesome.
That's the easiest way to reach out and connect. And I'm on LinkedIn, Facebook, and Instagram.
Perfect. Thank you so much. Is there any last thoughts you might have, or anything you wanted to end off with?
Oh, thank you. Yes. 2 things, actually. One, to the audience, I would say to you, now is the time, and Kavita has this beautiful theme, and it's just so resonating. Now is the time. It's your time. And, if you need support, reach out to me, Kavita. There's a whole community of us that are here to support you. And we want to see you reach your full potential. But now is the time to take those steps and be brave, be courageous, and to do it. And that would be my big message. And, Kavita, as always, you are such a beautiful soul. And thank you for doing this. And thank you for encouraging more women to find their time now. Like now is the time.
It is.
And collectively, we all have a lot of work to do to make this a better world. And our energy can certainly help with the shifts that need to happen. So keep being you, and thank you.
Thank you so much, Vicki. I loved it. I love this conversation. Take care. That was so inspiring, and Vicki Bradley's story of resilience after facing such hardship is entirely moving, but also teaches us that if we are in alignment with our true purpose and face obstacles with courage, we can achieve so much, just as she has done. Here are the key takeaways from Vicki. Number 1, being in alignment is available to all of us once we become conscious of that. Believing in the possibilities is the starting point. Number 2, remember what your gifts are. What are your strengths? When you get up every day, what do you get excited about sharing with the world? Ask your friends, what do they see? Number 3, change is not easy, but hugely gratifying once you make the leap because you're more in alignment with who you were meant to be. Sometimes staying the same is more painful than the change. Number 4, take that path of your true potentiality, which is so critical, especially in our world today. It's so important to recognize what our purpose is because we are doing a disservice to those around us when we are not reaching our full potential. Number 5, don't compare yourself to others. You don't know what their life is like. How do you make the most of your life? Number 6, how do you want to show up today? Who do you want to impact? You have a choice, and be aware of how you utilize those choices. Number 7, you can choose the different types of energy that you put out. You can choose anabolic or positive energy, or catabolic or negative draining energy, which leads to dis-ease or disease in us. Number 8, if you had the opportunity to do anything, magic wand, what would you be doing? Be courageous and do it. Ask yourself, do I want to survive or thrive? Number 9, one day, day one. You have that choice. We weren't created to be on this hamster wheel or to be on autopilot. I hope that was useful for you, and as you think about what you want to do moving forward in your life, it's not easy, but you're here listening to this, so thanks for taking the time out for yourself and taking steps to learn. Thanks also for supporting this podcast. If you like what you hear, please subscribe, rate, and review. Our goal with Power Purpose Play is to help women in midlife like you realize your true potential. So share this podcast with your friends if you feel it was helpful. You can also join our free community at powerpurposeplay.ca to receive resources and information and all we have in store for you. I'm so grateful for you to being here. See you next week.